Welcome once again to my channel 50 Shelves of Grey Matter, where I take you through my collection of books, shelf by shelf. Okay, so which is the first book today in my collection, which I'm going to be reviewing? Oh, look at this! It's a very small, very slim, thin book, and one of the most famous books of the world, Thomas A. Kempis's Counsels on the Spiritual Life. It is part of the uh, book called Imitation of Christ, which sells only next to Bible. It is said. A very good book. It's about Christian spirituality, written by Thomas A. Kempis, one of the Christian mystics, and it says that for 500 years it has been greatly influential. Uh, Kempis traces the progress of soul, urging poverty, humility, and dependence on God's love for attainment of heavens. It is one of those classics, but the beauty of this book is it is so, slim. It's hardly like 80 pages in this size. You can read it in an hour, but it is a book not to be read, it's to be meditated on, contemplated. And it's also such a beautiful cover. Let me see what this picture is about. It's written, the must be written here. What's the cover photo? Let's see what's the uh well, strangely it's maybe on the back. Yeah, the cover shows the temptation of Christ, a stained glass window of the Cologne School in the Victoria and Albert Museum, London. So it's from a church window art. Beautiful. So that there goes the first book, a little slim volume. Here comes a big book, Inspiration and Effort, Studies in Literary Attitude and Expression. This is by Amal Kiran. Now, he is one of my favorite authors of all times. He's not well known. He is an Indian uh, writer who passed away in 2010 at the age of 106. He was a disciple of Sri Aurobindo, and Sri Aurobindo is, of course, my all-time favorite, the greatest writer in my view. So he is of that school, and he was a disciple. His language is also so beautiful. This is this is more about philosophy of poetry. That's why the name is Inspiration and Effort. Poetry generally arises out of inspiration, but look at the chapter names, like Some Problems of Poetry, Moods and Modes of Poetry. And he talks about a lot of poets, which who are not very well known, but who he feels deserved a kind of a great honor in the English literary tradition, which they were denied. And but basically, the language of his, the way he writes, is so beautiful. And I mean, I don't understand his poetry. As I've said in the past episodes, I'm not a great fan of poetry, but his explanation of poetry in prose is more beautiful than any poetry that he has written. I mean, at least from my perspective, because I don't understand much of his poetry. For example, let me show you. This is a poem of his, um, Love and Death. Now, this poem I read, I didn't understand, but his comment on his own poem is itself a marvel. The way he writes, his prose is poetic, the most poetic prose I've ever read, except Sri Aurobindo, who was his master. So it's a great work. I want to have all his books. I have four books from Amal Kiran, purchased at different points of time from Aurobindo Ashram. Uh, but I want to get all his books. Uh, okay, so there goes the second work. This is too small. It's getting